I'm Russ Kickle, and on this episode of American Reef, that Paletta Elos tank is getting some live rock. So in the last video in this series, we got to see Mike, like a kid in a candy store, setting up his brand new coral reef aquarium. Well, that excitement actually continues through in this episode where he's actually doing some aquascaping. Luckily enough, we were able to do some Q&As with Mike while he was doing the aquascaping, and he got to share some of the principles that he follows for aquascaping. He'll also share some tips and tricks. For example, when a rock falls down on the bottom of your glass tank, how do you make sure that glass bottom doesn't break? Or the kind of steps or the process that you follow in adding livestock, just to make sure you ensure success along the way as well. Again, very informative and I think very helpful, especially for the new hobbyist. If you're looking for that first video in the series, I released it out on the product showcase videos. And again, you can go to AmericanReef.com, and of the three, just select the product showcase video button. If you're watching it via any kind of podcast, again, just search for saltwater. From there, you'll find the product showcase videos, and you'll see it in there. And then lastly, if you're looking for American Reef HPD, which for whatever reason, I guess I'm not very clear on kind of describing where you can find it, you can go to AmericanReefHPD.com, and you can purchase what I think is one of the best fish foods on the planet. Again, American Reef HPD, all one word, no spaces.com. Now let's head on over to Mike's.
So let's talk about where we were and what we're doing.
Okay. The tank had been set up for approximately a week with the water in it, testing to make sure the plumbing worked, nothing was leaking, the tank was leveled, what areas of the tank, the light covered, because once you put the rock in, it looks different than whenever there's no water in there. So you can see that the light basically covered to here. So obviously I need a second light. That's going to go here, and then the whole tank will be covered with light. Even though this is primarily right now at 1400K, it doesn't look that bright. It's still running roughly 900 par at the surface.
Yep.
So the next step is to add the live rock. Now my live rock has been curing different ways for approximately 4 to 6 weeks. When I say different ways, it was in fresh live rock was curing, older live rock was in the sump of my old tank, and then there was another vat of live rock from the old 70-gallon tank. So I basically have 3 different kinds of live rock going into this tank, all of which are cured, have sponges, have life on them. So those are going into the tank. Now, before you add to the tank, 1, as I said, protect everything you can from salt water. But 2, remember, rock takes up space. This has been a very hard lesson for me to learn because I've almost fried myself several times by dumping the rock in the tank and then having it displace the water in the sump to where it overflowed the sump. Needless to say, it's not good.
Right. And okay, and again, for those people out there, in other words, there's 2 methods, right? In other words, you can do a leak test and then use that water to put salt, your salt mixture in,
right?
Which is the way that you did.
Right.
Other people will do a leak test, get rid of that water, right? And then put the tank wherever they're at, and then move it again, and blah, 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 blah.
Nick has been building tanks for 30 years. I was pretty confident I wasn't going to get a leak in it.
Yep.
I had the old 70-gallon tank sitting here for the first week it was up.
Right.
If there was a leak, I could drain it in roughly 10 minutes.
Right.
So didn't have a problem with that. And I did drain it 3 times to get the leveling proper.
Right.
So I did the leak test, filled the leak, and filled it.
Right.
So I'm pretty confident that it's comfortable now.
Right.
So now the very simple process: you take water out, and you put rock in.
And now I just have to say, when all your friends tell you you suck,
yeah,
we've got video that shows.
Sadly to say, I've sucked on many hoses to start siphons. Old hands still do that method. I mean, new guys fill everything with water.
Yeah, then dump it in.
But
Yeah.
I think it's why I don't get sick. I've been exposed to every bacteria.
Yeah, that's right. You got them all right.
So, you know, once you've done that.
Okay, so now as far as the water that you've got here, your plan then is you're just going to take 5 gallons out to start with, or what are you going to do?
I'm going to take 5 gallons out until I start to hear the pump
Right.
trying too much.
Right.
Which will be happen fairly soon. I mean, you can see the water level dropping in the tank. And the next thing we're going to hear is the pump going.
So while that thing is kind of sucking its way down.
Right, I'm also going to check and see when I get close, because I don't want it. The bad thing about the great thing about DC pumps is they're variable.
Yep.
The bad part is if they get air bubbles in them, they don't like that very much, and they aren't real happy. And you'll start to hear weird sounds coming out of them.
Really?
Yeah, so I try not to run them dry.
Okay. Yeah.
Just my own rule.
No.
And one thing, I have the heater in the first chamber, which always stays filled, not in the last chamber. As I've seen people put it next to the pump chamber can run dry. That heater will then crack, and then you find something new called electricity, which is not good in salt water. It is an interesting sensation, let's say. Okay, we're getting close. Do this. And like in the old tank,
Yep. Same
it's
route.
mounted
Right?
on walking stones, and the nice thing, you can see how much gunk is still on there even though I've rinsed it. But the nice thing about this, it really shows off nicely once you put it in.
Yeah, it does.
The nice thing about this is that if I drop a rock, I'm not going to crack the glass.
Yeah, the starboard, that's
The starboard
super
is
nice.
for safety
Yeah.
reasons. It's much nicer.
Yeah, it is.
These are drilled, already pre-drilled, so
Yeah.
it should mount in fairly easily.
And when we say pre-drilled, that's a Mike took the time to drill it.
Yeah, rather than drilling it while we go, which is how I've done things in the past.
And now this one's going to be bare bottom again?
Yeah. In talking with people that have substrate,
Yep.
they spend a lot of time keeping it clean, and I've always it tends to accumulate stuff,
Right.
things that I don't particularly want.
Okay, so while you were doing your rock, right?
Right.
First of all, like you made some comments. I'm gonna put stags over here, this, that, and the other, right? Or you got your tape measure out, right? And you measured.
Right.
Talk to me. Why?
Okay. Basically, what I'm doing is I don't want all the rock right at the surface, even though it looks really nice having all the rock at the surface. You have to give the coral space to grow. So I have 6 to 8 inches everywhere, pretty much.
Okay.
So things that are going to grow really tall are going to go over here. Eventually, though, in every tank I have, which is something I hate to have to say and do, I take live rock out.
Right.
Over time, the corals grow over everything. They grow so thick and cover everything, you have to take the live rock down. Otherwise, all you have is everything sitting at the top of the tank.
Right.
And it's not a particularly attractive look unless you live atop the tank and can look down.
Right, right.
So in this tank, I'm setting it up for everything to grow 6 to 8 inches below from frags. So in a year, 18 months, everything will be at the surface. I'm going to have to more or less tear this down and drop it all down 4 to 6 inches.
Sure.
That's not a bad problem to have. But in the meantime, I want it to look nice.
Right.
Because otherwise it's going to go, oh, that's a really nice empty tank. So it's full of rock now, but over time there will probably be, right now there's roughly 60 pounds of rock in here.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually there'll probably be 35, 40 pounds tops.
Right.
So rock will be coming out as I fill in bottom stuff, everything else. So it'll be nice from that standpoint. I mean, I was worried that I scratched the glass, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And,
hold on that topic, right? How good did that starboard work out, right?
Yeah,
You're dropping rocks.
Usually these are big, bulky rocks, and I cut something in my finger, which made me drop a big rock. And if I didn't have the starboard, I probably would have cracked the glass.
Right.
But knowing that the starboard was here, I mean, for 80 bucks, it's the best 80 bucks I've spent in a long time.
You just saved your ass right there.
Yeah, right there. I paid for the tank.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to do this. I mean, it's kind of a pain in the ass to cut because you can't really cut it with a typical little thin bandsaw.
Right.
You have to have someone that knows what they're doing. Fortunately, I know enough cabinet makers and people with enough equipment that took 5 minutes to cut. I mean, literally took 5 minutes. Took an hour to drive there, but 5 minutes to cut.
Good point, right.
And I cut a template out originally, fit it in, and it fit pretty close to perfectly. I got paranoid that I was too long and I didn't want to have to do it again. So I cut it a little bit short, so I had to slop some into a corner.
Right.
But for the most part, you can cut it precisely with a good template and make it a precise fit into what you need, and then you're safe. I mean, I think it looks really nice right off the get-go versus a bare bottom of glass. I really like how this looks.
Yeah.
I mean, you may disagree, but I think it's a lot nicer, cleaner looking system than a typical bare bottom glass tank.
And it's functional, meaning when you have a rock, whatever, tumble over.
Because stuff will fall,
right.
particularly when you're just setting up the tank.
Right.
So now I'm not afraid that I'm going to come down some morning, a rock's going to fall and crack the glass and flood the house.
Right, right.
Because I've had things like that happen in the past.
Sure.
But now this is, I mean, a really nice addition to something we can add to a tank that's inert. It's not expensive, and it really adds to the overall look of the tank.
Right.
And I mean, I now see with the light hitting the rocks and the sand and the
right. You can see exactly where.
And the starboard, it looks really nice. Sorry, I got tongue-tied there.
Okay, so back on the measuring, right? Again, for the new hobbyists out there, you might want to explain why you kept things off the back or the sides.
I kept things off the back and side so I can clean any algae that accumulates. Whether it's coralline or anything else, wherever there's a rock to the glass, you can't really clean it, and then it sort of grows out from there like a virus or cancer, and it becomes a real pain. Also, the openness, the fish, for whatever reason, will be out more because there's spaces, but they also have holes where they can dive into. So the rock is really open. I mean, in the old days, we used to run 2 pounds of rock per gallon. Now I'm doing 60 pounds per 90 gallons.
Right.
So we're using a lot less rock and letting the corals fill in. And I'm also allowing a lot more open space. There's very little rock on rock in this tank. So there's very few places for detritus or other things to accumulate.
Right. And now, speaking of which, you think that from a circulation standpoint, you don't think you're going to need to add any more, pumps to that, right?
We're going to see. We're going to add amino acids and see how the flow is around the tank. Just like we did downstairs.
Okay.
And that will give us a good idea of what the flow looks like, because it's colorful and it shows what we're doing.
Okay. So what's the purpose of this test?
This is just a test to see what the flow is like around the tank. See how quickly this gets carried through and taken out. I mean, it's a pretty simple. I mean, this is Elos amino acids. I've loved Elos amino acids for the last 10 years, and they're my favorite. They're what I add every week to my tank, or Elos amino acids, and they're nice and colorful. If you add most amino acids, you don't see anything.
Right.
You add these, you know you're adding something. So we're gonna add them right here, and you can see how quickly that's going around.
Yeah, you can see how it banks off the sides, right? Literally.
And it should come back across the front, and should get taken out of the sun, taken out with the overflow. And the bottom's blowing it too.
See, now to me,
see, it's clear here already, and it's going all the way around.
But to me, that kind of swirling thing, right, it leaves that dead spot in the middle. Right?
Yeah, I may need to add a tunze to this.
Sure.
And attach it right here and have it blow across here.
Yeah, just something, because like you said, you see the outside.
Yeah.
But the inside.
The inside is kind of bare, but the outside is getting nice flow.
Right.
And this blew right across and is going right over the overflow. So you're getting the gyre action here without the gyre, but now I just need something for a little bit of turbulence in the middle.
Now, is that overflow such that you can actually mount something in there so you don't have to mount something to the side of the glass? In other words, is there any hollow spots in there where you can magnet something?
No, you can't get anything in there. So what I would mount it on is the back, right underneath this, and blow it right across.
Got it. Got it.
But you see how fast it cleared up a lot of it. There's still some down there, but a lot of it already got drawn out. But you saw the nice gyre action.
Yep. Okay, so now the last part of today's video is testing to see if them little suckers are going to live, right?
Yes, we said we were bringing up the snails, and we wanted to see if they died immediately. They're still here, and they're stuck to the cup, so they're still alive. And we're just going to put them right where we can see them under the light, and we'll see if they pop up.
So now, as a general rule of thumb, to me, sounds like you've got two tests. Do you die immediately? Right.
Or will I find them later tonight?
Right.
But usually when the water is a shock to them, I've seen them go on the glass for like 30 seconds and drop over dead.
Right.
And I've probably had more calls, not so much now, but probably 10 years ago when there were a bunch of different salts and there was a great deal of variability in them, that I just bought 20 snails and they were all dead 5 minutes after I put them in the tank. And then you would think, okay, was it this off, that off?
Right.
You never thought, well, are you using a different salt? And I found that there were a couple salts, I won't name them, that were really bad.
Salts,
and the snails, and it was because of sodium imbalance.
Right.
The snails would just go.
Right. Okay, so now how long do you give it? In other words, when will you give the thumbs up to say, okay, these snails live long enough, I'm going to put some corals in it?
I'll probably add coral, 1 or 2 pieces of coral next week.
Okay. So you give it a week then.
I'll probably add a fish before that.
Really? Okay.
I'll probably add one of the little damsels I have downstairs.
Okay.
Just to see how he does. Everything gets tested. I put in some test corals. I'll put in some test fish, test invertebrates. Everything gets tested because, 3 things may live, but if the 4th one dies, I still have a problem.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think that's going to be the case because this is really old cured rock.
Right.
The water's as pure as possible because I changed the RO unit as well as the DI, the carbon, and the sediment. Everything got changed. I ran 50 gallons off of that before I even put this in.
Right.
So this is as clean a water as I could possibly add to this tank from the get-go.
Yep. Okay, and so then, again, it sounds like probably a good place to cut it, meaning that what we're going to do is you're going to wait for a week.
Yep.
And then after something good lives, you're going to put something else in there that's living, most likely a fish.
It's in probably 2 to 3 weeks, I'll know how good the tank is doing.
Okay.
Then I will add more.
Okay.
I mean, then I'll add 8 frags.
Sure.
A couple fish. And then probably a week after that, if they do good, then all the fish will come in. Because it's easier to add all the fish at once. Right now, they're all downstairs and fine and happy together. I don't want to throw in one fish and then one fish because one fish develops this territory and beats the crap out of everything else that you put in.
Right.
And I've had it happen with big fish, small fish. Hasn't really mattered.
Sure. Okay, so to that point, we'll be back around 3 weeks. And we'll see what happens from there.
That sounds great.
Thanks, Mike.
So now what was your key takeaway from these videos, right? Mine, for example, was that starboard. I love that thing. I mean, talk about a relatively inexpensive product that will really help you achieve long-term success, right? I mean, first of all, think about it. If you're into that bare bottom tank, right, that product is like a must-have. I mean, First of all, the theory behind the bare bottom is very simple. Keep your solids in suspension until they can export, because what happens if solids break down, then when you have breakdown, you have nitrate, phosphate, and other kind of issues that basically are hard on corals. Right? So again, that principle is such that it's sound and it makes sense. Well, what this does is it kind of takes that to the next degree, because now it gives you an aesthetically looking bottom, right, that when you think about it, it allows you to have that kind of bare bottom look. Much safer though, meaning when those rocks fall, you don't have to worry about that glass at the bottom of your tank kind of shattering. You know, and it's one of those, you know, one of those kind of items that I think is just awesome, and I never heard of it until Mike actually kind of used it. And I think that's one of the things that I really love about these videos in general, right? There's always something to learn, whether it's the new hobbyist or the advanced aquarist, right? And the goal again, success. And speaking of success, my sponsors, right, they care about your success, right? Because without you, they wouldn't be in business, really. And again, that's the Bulk Reef Supplies, the Premium Aquatics, for example. You'll find out that they care about carrying quality products, higher-end products that guarantee you success, again, at an affordable price. When you look at Worldwide Corals, for example, you know, the corals that they carry, the frags that they carry, the diversification, for example. And again, at the relatively affordable price as well. You know, again, when you look at Tunzi for the life support systems, or, you know, ecosystems with the Miracle Mud, again, all of these guys, if you kind of follow their rules, they really care about you succeeding. And again, it's a two-way street, right? They win and you win. So to that point, give them a chance to earn your business. I am sure you will be very satisfied. Again, and thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to send them over to me at AmericanReef@me.com.